How's it going, guys? I hope you're all doing well out there today, wherever you are in the world. Sorry if I sound a little bit husky. I've copped whatever cold flu thing is going around at the moment. That is also why I look incredibly tired, but the show must go on, as they say. So I have a bit of a confession to make. My pedal board cleanliness and well-being leaves a lot to be desired. Basically, I do a lot of different gigs and my pedal board is in a constant state of flux. Depending on the gig, I want the right gear for the job, which normally means ripping off certain pedals, putting certain pedals back on, depending on the amp I'm using or the routing. It all goes a bit awry and it causes more problems than just not being photogenic, where I'm yanking cables around all the time. Things get broken or lost. It's a bit of a ball ache. So I decided this year I was going to build myself a big boy, Instagram worthy pedal board that could do any gig that came up without having to pull things on and off. Something that's going to let me do any kind of routing that I need and just be flexible and solid. And it just so happens at that time, my friends at Friedman told me they were re-releasing their pedal boards. So this is the 1524 model. And as you can see, it's got this awesome like tiered design. I find with pedal trains and things like that, they're awesome. I'm not talking down about pedal train. I've used them for years. But I often have to use risers or things to adapt the pedal board to be able to hit the buttons on the back row. Things like my Pt1 core, where the front of it's sloped on a sloped pedal board, it means the buttons are almost impossible to get to without using some kind of riser. So I love this sort of tiered design. There's plenty of cable management to be able to get it nice and tidy. Includes these riser things for your wah or expression pedal or anything like that. And there's tons of space underneath as well, which I found quite appealing. I'm thinking of mounting some stuff underneath that's going to be controlled on the top side by a switcher unit that's going to go here. I have a rough plan in my head, but we'll go through it all as we get there. So yeah, this is the Friedman pedal board. So they have different sizes available. There'll be some information linked down below to the different sizes and things like that. And if you notice, there's a nice hole here on the end. Let me just get that in a nice light here. So as I mentioned, I wanted this to be as flexible as possible, as tidy as possible. So if you buy these Friedman pedal boards, you can get something that is called their Platinum pack. And in it also includes these two little fellas. So this one is the Buffer Bay 6. And what it lets you do is it gives you a pass-through for MIDI. And I believe all of these are TRS connections, so you can do foot switching, all that sort of stuff. It's also got a built-in buffer on the guitar side, but I suppose you could use that anywhere in the chain, actually. And because it's like proprietary to the Friedman thing, this slots in that bottom, that side cutout there. It just screws straight in, so you can do all your routing and then all of your cables come to the same place, which is brilliant for me. I want it to be nice and tidy, and it also lets me change the routing and things depending on if I'm using 4-cable method, straight into an amp, all that sort of stuff. Like I said, I'm still in the planning stages. It'll all be included later in the video, but I think this is going to be wicked. And like I said, because it's their proprietary thing, it mounts perfectly in that gap. Also included in the Platinum package is the Friedman Power Grid 10, which again, being their own proprietary thing, this screws directly into the board, so it's stable. And it provides you 10 outlets of super clean power at 350 milliamps per outlet. And I just love that this is all sort of a system made by one company. Everything fits perfectly. Everything screws in super tight. And everything's just really solid and rugged. Like I said, I'm going to go through a bit more of this when I've got everything planned out. But I'm just giving you a bit of an introduction to the board itself. So with the power grid and the buffer bay, you've got your complete pedal board system ready for any pedals that you want to stick on it. With the power grid, you also get all of your 9-volt adapters. There's a couple of 9-volt with blue tips, I imagine possibly reverse polarity, but I'll of course read the manual before using any of that sort of stuff. And a little manual and your mounting screws and things. You get your mounting screws for your buffer bay as well. Like I said, just all screws together really tightly. Nothing's going to come unstuck in transit. So all of the audio cabling for this build has been supplied by the wonderful people at Pedal Patch. They're a UK-based company and I've gone for 2 sets of their 20 connector solderless patch cable kit. So they've got all the connectors in there and the cable. They've also sent me some accessories. So I've got these little stick-on things for your cable ties to keep everything nice and tidy. Supplied some cable ties. There's a really cool tool for cutting the cable super straight to get that solderless system working as good as physically possible. I know some people aren't a huge fan of solderless and some people absolutely love it. I personally have been using solderless cables for an extended period of time, and I've never really had any major problems. I think problems arise when they're not put together right or not secured properly. The only time I've ever really had solderless cables go bad is during a pedalboard rebuild where, you know, I'm tugging stuff about and it's no surprise really. But I think if they're assembled correctly and the cable management's good, solderless cables are great. I personally don't have any issue with them, which is exactly why I'm using them. So I haven't used these pedal patch cables before, but I've got some friends that have and they really love them. So I'm giving them a try, and I'll do a full video review following up on these cable kits once I've done this build, so I can let you know exactly how the assembly was and how reliable they are and all of that stuff. So be sure to subscribe and all that fun stuff, and I'll keep you in the loop. So as I mentioned, I need this board to be as flexible as possible without having to pull stuff on and off of it. So I want it to be able to go into the front of a clean amp. I want it to be able to do 4 cable method. I want it to be able to channel switch amps that I use regularly. And I also want to be able to go direct to the board as well. So I know I'm going to include my Boss GT1000 core, and that will handle the amp modeling, but also you can do some pretty complex routing things in there. At the moment it's sort of all up here, but I have a plan somewhat. And I think something like the buffer bay is perfect for a build like this because it lets all your inputs and outputs be in one place. Very easy to change that up depending on what configuration you're going for. And like I said, with all these connected and then the GT1000 doing some interesting flip-flop routing, I should be able to utilize these outputs for any one of those kinds of rigs. So as you perhaps gathered, the plan for this pedal board at the moment is currently mostly in my head. And I think it's very important when undertaking a project of this magnitude to have a clear plan. So I'm going to take all my components and put them on a nice big table in an open space so I don't lose anything, and just mess with some layouts, design everything, measure some stuff out, maybe do some signal flow diagrams just to get everything together before starting. So I'm going to switch to amateur hour iPhone footage, so just put up with the potentially poor sound quality and visuals. It's just so I can keep you posted on the process without having to set up a whole video thing somewhere else. I really want to do a full demo of this board when it's done, but I'm quite up against it time-wise. I'm leaving for a tour tomorrow. So depending on time, there'll either be a full sound demo in this video, or there will be a second part to this video, which is the full sound demo. But we'll see how we get on. So yeah, let's crack on. So here's where we're at. I've got the board laid out. I've got a multitude of pedals. I've sort of got the must-haves and a few it would be nice if it fits kind of pedals, and a few options. So I've got a couple of different compressors because I'm going through a compressor change-up phase apparently at the moment. So I'm just gonna sort of start laying it out and see how best fits. Size-wise fits obviously, but also how it fits with how my feet fall when I play and things like that. So stuff's easy to get to without causing, you know, to knock knobs and things like that. So yeah, let's have a go at getting sort of a working layout together. Sorry for the drop in quality. I'm now on my old phone because my new phone is doing all the time-lapse crap. So this is sort of where we're at the moment. I think that I'm going to go pretty much digital with any delays and modulation. So between this little zoom unit, the multi-stop, which is one of my favourite pedals, and the GT1000, I think that'll take care of all modulation and delay, reverb, anything like that, and some special effects like filters. Mua Yellow Comp is pretty much my favourite compressor. I've been having a pretty good time with this Unit 67 as well, so I might try and squeeze that on. There's some additional space, if you'll excuse the shaky camera work. There's some, oh, everything's going to some Velcro. There's some additional space down the bottom that I could potentially put the Unit 67. I've got the Dirty Shirley on there for if I'm using a clean amp, and the Buxton Boost will work with the Shirley or with a normal amp, so I'm pretty happy with that selection. I've got the DoD Looking Glass in as sort of a placeholder at the moment. I love it as a low gain drive, but I'm not sure I really need a low gain drive on this board. Figuring it out. The other option is the Wampler Bell that could sit down in that little gap, or the Bogner Blue possibly. I really wanted to put on my Octron, but it's just too big to be practical. But as luck would have it, I do have an Octron 3 in the post currently, so perhaps that will take the place of the Looking Glass. I might use the Looking Glass as a bit of a placeholder for now. Wire of choice at the moment, I'm digging this Fender Treadlight actually. I wasn't expecting to like it, but very cool. And my full tone Clyde Deluxe, which is probably my favourite wire of all time, is on my Kemper board, which is currently in some sort of storage locker somewhere between shows. Yeah, the expression pedal is going to be linked to the GT1000 core. There is still space underneath. I'm considering popping a pedal or two underneath, but it just needs to be stuff I wouldn't need to get to really. So this is sort of where we're at. What I'm going to do now is attach the power supply and the buffer and see where we get to. So I've now installed the power and the buffer bay underneath. So what's quite cool is the power gives you two different locations. You can either have it at the far end or in the middle, and the buffer bay as well gives you two options. It seems, I think that's what it's for, where you can either have the buffer flush against the end of the board or countersunk, which I've actually done, so it's set in a little bit, which I think is a great idea, because if you've got loads of cables sticking out the edge of your pedal board, you got you know, other musicians on stage that might stand on the ends of them and snap them off. So I think that's a nice feature to have it countersunk to avoid that happening. Yeah, right, so that's in now, and I'm going to position and Velcro the pedals that I know have a definite location, and then we'll try and fit everything else around it. Okay, so this is kind of where we're at. I've roughly tacked down the pedals that I know are going to stay where they are. So this one, the Expressions, the Boss, the Zoom, and the Buxton, and everything else is kind of up for debate. Compressor's still in contention. I think I probably will go with the Unit 67 because it fits quite nicely down there under the tier. I think the way I'm going to approach this, because I had a sketch out of the signal path and it didn't quite fit the way I was hoping. So I think what I'm going to do is get the basic wiring in, and then see what space that leaves me, because I want plenty of room to do cable runs and things. So I'm probably breaking every single rule in the Pedalboard Bible thing, if there is one. But that's the way I'm going to do it. We've got the old buffer bay in down there, I don't know if you can see it, and the power's underneath. So yeah, let's crack on with the first bit of cabling. Currently playing pedal Tetris here. What's good is that you can put these solderless jacks in the pedals while you move them around to get the spacing right before you do any of the cabling. The GT1000 core front end and the Zoom are patched in already. Cables have been a breeze so far, no problems. Just trying to get everything to fit exactly as I want it.